Have you seen the group chat?
No.
Please. It's my mom's Remembrance Day.
Who's up?
I'll do it. I could see and feel everything on the other side.
Why didn't you give it to the police?
There is a dark and deeply haunted history. Sister isn't the first to go missing.
What's left in Shelby Oaks?
Don't be afraid. You should be proud of her.
Top 10 movies made by YouTubers. For years, YouTube was seen as a stepping stone, a place for short videos, experiments, and internet fame that rarely translated beyond the screen in your pocket. But that idea didn't last. As the platform grew, so did the ambition of the people using it. What began as vlogs, comedy sketches, reviews, and short-form storytelling slowly evolved into something bigger. These creators weren't just chasing views anymore. They were learning how to tell stories, how to direct performances, how to build worlds, and eventually, how to make movies. Some of them brought their existing audiences along for the ride. Others quietly proved they could compete in spaces once reserved for traditional filmmakers. And a few surprised everyone by delivering films that stood on their own, not as YouTuber projects, but as legitimate cinema. These aren't just success stories about internet fame. They're about creative evolution, about learning the language of film outside film school, about taking risks, facing skepticism, and proving that talent doesn't depend on where you start, only on how far you're willing to push yourself. From horror to documentary, from indie drama to blockbuster superhero films, these creators didn't just cross over, they leveled up. These are the best times content creators made the leap from YouTube to full-on filmmaking. Number 10, Shelby Oaks. At number 10 is a film that carried enormous expectations long before anyone saw a single frame. Chris Stuckmann had spent over a decade building credibility as one of YouTube's most respected film critics. Unlike reaction-driven content, his reviews were thoughtful, measured, and rooted in genuine love for cinema. He spoke the language of structure, theme, pacing, and performance, and over time, his audience trusted that voice. So when Stuckmann announced that he wasn't just reviewing movies anymore, but writing and directing one himself, the response was immediate. Supporters were excited. Skeptics were ready to scrutinize. The pressure was unavoidable. Shelby Oaks marks Stuckmann's transition from commentator to creator, and fittingly, he chose the horror genre, a space he had openly championed for years. The film follows a woman searching for her missing sister, a paranormal investigator whose online ghost hunting show ends abruptly after a disturbing broadcast. When a cryptic clue arrives years later, the search reopens, pulling her into an abandoned town and a mystery that refuses to stay buried. What makes Shelby Oaks stand out isn't just its premise, but its ambition. The film blends traditional narrative filmmaking with found footage techniques, online video aesthetics, and analog horror influences. It understands how modern audiences consume fear, not just through theaters, but through screens, clips, and fragmented digital spaces. That hybrid approach feels intentional rather than trendy. It reflects a filmmaker who understands internet culture from the inside while still respecting cinematic grammar. There are moments that feel raw, moments that feel deliberately restrained, and moments that show a clear awareness of pacing and atmosphere. Reactions to the film have been mixed, and that's almost inevitable for a debut under such scrutiny. But whether viewers loved or criticized it, Shelby Oaks accomplished something important. It proved that Stuckmann wasn't chasing novelty. He wasn't relying on his name or platform to carry the film. Instead, he delivered a project that showed discipline, respect for genre, and a willingness to learn through execution. It's not the work of a finished filmmaker, it's the work of one beginning in earnest, and that may be its greatest strength. Number 9, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened? At number 9 is a documentary created by someone who understood Hollywood both as an insider and as a fan. Jon Schnepp had an unusual career path. Professionally, he worked in animation and television, contributing to projects like Metalocalypse and the Venture Brothers. Online, however, he became widely known as a passionate, encyclopedic film commentator, someone who could discuss pop culture with both humor and authority. With The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened?, Schnepp combined those two worlds into a single, focused project. The documentary investigates one of Hollywood's most infamous unrealized films, Tim Burton's Superman Lives, a project that once starred Nicolas Cage and nearly reinvented the superhero genre in the late 1990s. Despite years of development, concept art, and script drafts, the film collapsed before production began. Schnepp approaches the story not as gossip, but as archaeology. He interviews directors, writers, producers, and studio figures, patiently reconstructing how the project evolved and why it ultimately failed. Rare concept art, costume designs, test footage, and behind-the-scenes materials breathe life into a film that never existed, making its absence feel strangely tangible. What elevates the documentary is Schnepp's tone. There's no mockery, no cynicism. Instead, there's curiosity and empathy. He treats the failure not as a punchline, but as a reminder of how fragile ambitious ideas can be within an industry shaped by fear and finances. The film also serves as a broader reflection on creativity itself, how risk is often punished, and how visionary projects can disappear despite the talent behind them. For Schnepp, the documentary became a defining statement. It demonstrated that his deep knowledge wasn't limited to commentary, but could be translated into compelling, emotionally resonant filmmaking. It stands today as both a fascinating case study and a tribute to unrealized imagination. Number 8, A Heist with Markiplier. At number 8 is a project that fundamentally challenged what a film could be on YouTube. Markiplier had already become one of the platform's most recognizable creators through gaming content, built on personality, humor, and audience trust. But when YouTube began experimenting with original long-form projects, he saw an opportunity to push beyond traditional formats. The result was A Heist with Markiplier, an interactive narrative told across dozens of videos, allowing viewers to make choices that directly alter the story. With more than 30 unique endings, the project operates as both a comedy and a structural experiment. The plot centers on a chaotic robbery that goes spectacularly wrong. At key moments, viewers are prompted to choose what happens next, clicking different paths that lead to wildly different outcomes. Some endings are absurd, some surprisingly dark, and others intentionally anticlimactic. What makes the project remarkable is its craftsmanship. Despite its silliness, A Heist with Markiplier is meticulously organized. Continuity is tracked carefully. Branching paths are clearly mapped. Performances are committed, and production design far exceeds what most viewers expect from YouTube projects. The interactivity isn't a gimmick, it's the foundation. Markiplier understands that engagement isn't just about watching anymore. It's about participation. By designing the story around that idea, he created something uniquely suited to the platform rather than forcing traditional cinema onto it. He later proved his versatility by writing, directing, and starring in Iron Lung, a conventional feature-length horror film that demonstrated tighter control and atmospheric restraint. Together, these projects show a creator who understands both the freedom of digital storytelling and the discipline required for long-form filmmaking, and how to move confidently between the two. Number 7, Pretend That You Love Me. At number 7 is a film that blurs the line between performance and reality so completely that it becomes impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. Joel Haver built his audience on YouTube through awkward, surreal comedy sketches that felt intentionally rough around the edges. His visual style was unpolished, his humor uncomfortable, and his timing deliberately off. But beneath that surface-level absurdity was a creator deeply interested in emotion, connection, and loneliness. Pretend That You Love Me is where all of that crystallizes. The film begins deceptively simply. Joel goes on a series of dates with different women, each interaction filmed in a naturalistic, almost documentary style. The conversations feel real, the pauses feel real, the discomfort feels painfully authentic. At first, it seems like a loose collection of awkward encounters. Then, the film starts to change. As it progresses, the structure slowly unravels, revealing that these dates are part of a much larger emotional framework. Grief, isolation, artistic desperation, and self-awareness bleed into the narrative. Joel places himself directly at the center, not as a character to admire, but as one to question. What makes the film remarkable is its ambiguity. It's never entirely clear how much is scripted, how much is improvised, or how much is emotionally autobiographical. That uncertainty becomes the point. The audience is forced to sit with discomfort, not just romantic discomfort, but existential discomfort. Visually, the film remains minimal. There are no flashy sequences or dramatic camera movements. Instead, the power comes from intimacy. Close-ups linger too long, silence stretches, conversations feel unfinished. This restraint makes the emotional turns hit harder. Rather than offering catharsis, Pretend That You Love Me asks uncomfortable questions about why people create art, why they seek validation, and how loneliness can quietly shape identity. It's not a film designed to please everyone, and that's exactly why it works. For Joel Haver, the film represents a bold step beyond sketch comedy. It proves that his instincts extend into long-form storytelling, and that his willingness to be emotionally exposed is not a gimmick, but a creative philosophy. Number 6, Skinamarink. At number 6 is one of the most divisive and unforgettable horror films of the past decade. Before Skinamarink became a viral sensation, Kyle Edward Ball was posting short horror videos on YouTube under the channel name Bite-Sized Nightmares. These clips leaned heavily on atmosphere rather than story, evoking fear through darkness, silence, and suggestion. Skinamarink takes that same philosophy and stretches it into feature-length form. The film follows two young siblings who wake up in the middle of the night to find their house fundamentally broken. Doors and windows have vanished, their parents are gone, and something unseen seems to be watching from the shadows. Plot, in the traditional sense, is almost non-existent. Instead, Skinamarink operates like a memory or a nightmare. The camera often points at corners, ceilings, and dark hallways. Faces are rarely visible. Dialogue is sparse and often whispered. Long stretches pass with almost nothing happening, forcing the viewer to project fear into the void. For some, this approach is unbearable. For others, it's terrifying. The film taps into a very specific kind of childhood fear, the dread of being alone at night, the imagination filling in gaps, the sense that the house itself has turned hostile. By stripping away conventional storytelling, Ball allows those primal anxieties to take over. What makes Skinamarink especially notable is that it doesn't compromise its vision. It refuses to explain itself. It refuses to reassure the audience. And it refuses to follow the rhythms of mainstream horror. Despite, or because of, this, the film became a cultural phenomenon. Shot on an extremely low budget, it generated massive discussion online, polarizing viewers and critics alike. Some praised it as a masterpiece of experimental horror. Others dismissed it as pretentious. But almost no one forgot it. Skinamarink proves that YouTube-born filmmakers don't have to imitate traditional cinema to succeed. Sometimes, the boldest move is leaning fully into what makes your voice different, even if it means alienating part of the audience. Number 5, This Place Rules. At number 5 is a documentary that captured a cultural moment as it was unraveling. Andrew Callaghan built his following on YouTube through his channel All Gas, No Brakes, where he attended fringe conventions, protests, and strange gatherings with a handheld microphone and a neutral expression. His style was deceptively simple. Let people talk, don't interrupt, don't editorialize. As the political climate in the United States grew more volatile, Callaghan's work shifted with it. What began as oddball curiosity gradually turned into something more unsettling. rallies became angrier, conversations became more extreme, and the humor gave way to concern. This Place Rules takes that evolution and crystallizes it into a feature-length documentary. Rather than focusing on a single event, the film weaves together footage from across the political spectrum, capturing the emotional temperature of a country drifting toward open conflict. Callaghan doesn't lecture. He doesn't frame heroes or villains. He just listens. That restraint is what makes the film so powerful. By refusing to guide the viewer toward easy conclusions, This Place Rules forces the audience to sit with discomfort. The result is a portrait of modern media ecosystems, how outrage spreads, how misinformation thrives, and how attention itself becomes a currency. For a filmmaker who started by interviewing people at flat Earth conventions, the leap to HBO-level documentary filmmaking could have felt jarring. Instead, it feels inevitable. Callaghan's YouTube background didn't hold him back. It trained him to be present, adaptable, and fearless in chaotic environments. This Place Rules stands as proof that documentary filmmaking doesn't always require distance. Sometimes, it requires being exactly where the story is breaking. Number 4, Shazam. At number 4 is the most mainstream success on this list so far, and one of the clearest examples of a creator scaling up without losing their identity. Before directing major studio films, David F. Sandberg was best known online for his YouTube channel, Pony Smasher. There, he posted short horror films made with minimal resources but maximum ingenuity. His work was clever, efficient, and deeply aware of how to scare an audience quickly. One of those shorts went viral. That short eventually became Lights Out, a feature film adaptation that opened the door to larger projects. From there, Sandberg moved on to Annabelle creation, and then, unexpectedly, to the superhero genre. Shazam could have been a disaster. At the time, DC's cinematic universe was known for its darker, self-serious tone. Superheroes were brooding, stakes were apocalyptic, humor was limited. Shazam went the opposite direction. The film follows a foster kid who gains the ability to transform into an adult superhero simply by saying a magic word. Instead of leaning into darkness, Sandberg embraced sincerity, comedy, and childhood wonder. What makes Shazam work is how grounded it feels despite its fantastical premise. Number 3, Talk to Me. At number 3 is a film that shocked audiences not because of where it came from, but because of how confidently it arrived. Danny and Michael Philippou built their reputation on YouTube under the channel name Rackaracka, where their videos blended extreme stunts, dark comedy, over-the-top violence, and surprisingly precise filmmaking. For years, their work felt chaotic on the surface, but beneath that chaos was an understanding of timing, framing, and escalation. Talk to Me is where all of that discipline finally snapped into focus. The film follows a group of teenagers who discover an embalmed hand that allows them to communicate with the dead, as long as they don't let the spirits stay too long. What begins as a party trick quickly turns into obsession, and then into something far darker. What sets Talk to Me apart from standard possession horror is restraint. The scares are brutal, but they're purposeful. The violence isn't random. Each horrifying moment feeds into a story about grief, denial, and the dangerous ways people try to numb pain. The Philippou brothers use practical effects with surgical precision. Possession scenes are raw, physical, and deeply unsettling, not because they're flashy, but because they feel invasive. The horror doesn't just happen to the characters, it happens inside them. What makes this such a powerful YouTube to film transition is how invisible that transition feels. Nothing about Talk to Me suggests first-time filmmakers. The film is controlled, confident, and emotionally grounded. It announced the Philippou brothers not as viral creators who made a movie, but as filmmakers who had been preparing for this moment all along. Number 2, 10 Cloverfield Lane. At number 2 is a film built almost entirely on tension, and the trust that the audience will stay with it. Before stepping into studio filmmaking, Dan Trachtenberg was known online as a co-host of The Totally Rad Show and the creator of the viral short Portal: No Escape. That short in particular demonstrated his grasp of atmosphere, spatial storytelling, and escalating suspense. 10 Cloverfield Lane is where those instincts were tested at full scale. The film begins with a woman waking up in an underground bunker after a car accident. Two men tell her that the outside world has become uninhabitable. One of them seems helpful, the other seems terrifying. The question isn't just who to trust, it's whether reality itself can be trusted at all. Unlike its found footage predecessor, this film is intimate and claustrophobic. The camera rarely leaves the bunker. The story unfolds through conversations, silences, and subtle shifts in behavior. John Goodman delivers a performance that anchors the film's dread. His character is unpredictable, sometimes protective, sometimes menacing, keeping both the protagonist and the audience perpetually off balance. What makes Trachtenberg's direction so effective is patience. He resists the urge to explain too much too quickly. Every revelation is delayed just long enough to make the uncertainty unbearable. When the truth finally emerges, the film pivots, but never loses its emotional through line. 10 Cloverfield Lane proved that a creator with roots in online criticism and short-form storytelling could command a studio production without sacrificing intimacy or control. It's a masterclass in tension and one of the strongest debut features of the past decade. Number 1, 8th Grade. At number 1 is a film that didn't need spectacle, horror, or high-concept ideas to make its impact. It only needed honesty. Bo Burnham is one of the rare creators who truly grew up on YouTube. He began posting comedy songs as a teenager, quickly gaining attention for his wit and self-awareness. As he matured, his work evolved, becoming more introspective, more critical of performance, and more concerned with how the internet shapes identity. 8th Grade is the culmination of that evolution. Written and directed by Burnham, the film follows Kayla, an awkward middle schooler navigating the final week of 8th grade while documenting her life through YouTube videos. She offers advice she doesn't yet believe, speaks confidently to a camera while shrinking in real life, and struggles with anxiety she can barely articulate. The film is quiet, but devastatingly precise. Burnham captures the discomfort of adolescence with surgical accuracy. The forced conversations, the social rituals, the constant self-surveillance. Social media isn't portrayed as evil, but as omnipresent, a mirror that never turns off. What makes 8th Grade extraordinary is empathy. Burnham never mocks Kayla. He never rushes her growth. He allows moments to linger, even when they're painful to watch. Scenes of embarrassment become exercises in endurance. Moments of connection feel fragile, almost accidental. For a filmmaker whose career began with performing for millions, 8th Grade is deeply restrained. There are no flashy techniques, no obvious attempts to impress, just careful observation and emotional truth. It's also one of the most honest depictions of growing up online ever put to film, made by someone who understands that experience from the inside. More than any other entry on this list, 8th Grade proves that the skills developed on YouTube, self-awareness, direct communication, emotional risk, can translate into something quietly profound. These creators didn't abandon where they came from. They built on it. They took the tools, instincts, and audiences they developed online and transformed them into films that stand on their own. Not as YouTuber movies, but as cinema. The journey from YouTube to cinema was never supposed to look like this. For a long time, creators were told that the platform was a ceiling, not a foundation. That short videos, internet fame, and algorithm-driven success could never translate into real filmmaking. That Hollywood and YouTube existed in separate worlds, governed by different rules. These creators proved otherwise. Some arrived with millions of subscribers already watching their every move. Others crossed over quietly, letting their work speak before their names did. But all of them carried something unique with them, an understanding of audience, pacing, and authenticity shaped by years of direct connection. They didn't just learn how to tell stories, they learned how people respond to stories. That's what makes these transitions so compelling. Not every project was perfect. Not every leap landed cleanly. But each one demonstrated growth, the willingness to risk credibility, step into unfamiliar territory, and be judged by an entirely new standard. In horror, they brought fresh fear. In documentary, they captured moments others missed. In drama, they translated online vulnerability into emotional truth. And in blockbuster cinema, they proved that creative voice doesn't have to disappear at scale. What unites all of these filmmakers isn't platform or genre, it's courage. The courage to stop reacting to other people's work and start creating their own. As the line between internet content and traditional cinema continues to blur, stories like these are becoming less surprising and more inevitable.